anyone can say we're number one or we're the best. And we don't try to be the best. We try to be the most engaging. We want to win the minds and hearts of our audience. And I think we've done a pretty good job so far.
B2B Content Strategist is the podcast where you'll hear actionable advice and strategic guidance from content marketing leaders. I'm Amy Woods, CEO of Content 10X, and I sit down with leading B2B marketers to discuss how they overcome challenges with limited time and resources and execute winning campaigns time after time. If you want to improve and streamline your content marketing, keep listening. Hello and welcome back to B2B Content Strategist. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and in this episode, I'm joined by Devin Reed. Now, Devin is the head of content strategy at Gong, where he's responsible for thought leadership, content marketing, sales research, and social media. He also advises B2B content marketing teams and runs the Content Strategy Reader, a free email newsletter that shares strategies and tactics for creating irresistible content. With a bio like that, we absolutely had to invite Devin onto the podcast. Devin also writes and speaks prolifically about sales and marketing, and if you're not already following him on LinkedIn, I highly recommend doing so. In this episode, we discuss why LinkedIn is such a big focus for Gong and why engagement is their number one KPI. We also talk about the challenges of building a marketing team, why overwhelm is counterproductive to content marketers, and the tool Gong uses to supercharge their content analysis. Let's dive into the conversation. Devin, welcome to B2B Content Strategist. It's great to have you on the show.
Appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
No, it is wonderful to have you. Been looking forward to this conversation. So to kick off what I'm sure is going to be a great chat, please could you just let me know a little bit more about your role and about what Gong does as well?
Yeah, sure. So Gong's mission is to unlock reality to help individuals and companies reach their full potential. And the way that we do that is we automatically capture all of the different customer-facing interactions. Think, sales, customer support, CS, all of their emails, phone calls, web conferencing, and even in person when that used to happen and when it happens again. And we effectively show you what's working and what isn't across all these interactions by delivering insights at scale. So think of things like, how do I lower my talk time to be a better sales rep? What talk tracks are being used in the field as a head of sales or enablement, right? So those sorts of things. A little bit about me. I'm the head of content strategy there. I actually joined Gong 4.5 years ago as a sales rep. I was a salesperson for most of my career up until a couple of years ago. And so I was the second sales hire back in the day, sold for a couple of years, and then moved literally one day, picked up all my things in a cardboard box, walked across the office and unpacked that cardboard box and joined the marketing team where I was a one-man band running our content strategy. And so I've had the honor and privilege of scaling that team out over the last few years. We now have 6 people reporting to me on my team, and we're in charge essentially of building brand and pipeline via content. And so I'm responsible for all of our organic channels. I try to list all of them, but it's kind of like having 6 or 7 kids. I always end up forgetting one at the very end. But it's things like, thought leadership, sales research, the blog, social media, SEO, email marketing. This is that point where I start to forget. I'm sure there's a couple more, but those are all the things that we're responsible for.
Cool. So what does the team look like in terms of how you've split out the roles and the team structure? Yeah.
So we have 2 content marketers. We have a growth marketer who started as a content marketer and switched, and now he's building out what growth marketing is at Gong. We have a managing editor, a part-time content intern, which is our content coordinator. And then I just, thought leadership just moved over from product marketing to my team. So I have a senior manager of thought leadership that reports to me as well. And I'm hiring, if you don't mind me a quick plug, I'm hiring a social media manager. If you're interested, that's my current open role as of today. So that's where we are.
I'm sure you'll you'll find someone fantastic for that role that will come and want to work with you, Devin, and with the Gong team.
Hope so.
So you guys are obviously creating, lots of different content and lots of different formats, etc. In terms of your overarching content strategy, what are the core key priorities content-wise at Gong?
Absolutely. So I think the baseline is we are continuing to scale the channels that I just mentioned. Thought leadership is the new one, and I've kind of been doing thought leadership in one way on my own, but we're kind of like really putting it together now. So that is a top priority, is making sure our thought leadership is wildly effective this year. And so that's launching new types of reports, new partnerships with Harvard Business Review, and some other cool projects. So and we just launched a go-to-market newsletter called The Edge, which is penned by our president and COO, Kelly Wright. And so we're just trying to really build out the breadth of our thought leadership. And so it was Gong Labs, which is our research blog for sales pros. Now we have these, executive thought leadership reports. We just put out our first one, and we have one every quarter for the rest of the year and moving forward. And then we have this newsletter. And so we're really just trying to hit all the different angles. So whether you're, if you like short form, if you like email, if you like long research reports, like we're just trying to serve that audience. And so another big thing we're working on is supporting our reality roadshow. So we have a 6-city, if I remember correctly, roadshow coming up over the summer, starting in San Francisco, hitting New York City for a large virtual hybrid event, going to London, and then a few executive dinners following that. So my team's responsible for the promotion and the session content, which is, of course, a split effort across multiple people on the marketing team. I'll be speaking there as well. And then some of the things I kind of mentioned earlier, just scaling out my team, have a social media role that we're hiring as we look to scale some of those digital channels. And then the managing editor I had just mentioned, we're building out a editorial process that will essentially become a content creation engine for the whole marketing department. So those are the kind of things we're doing, from the big, exciting public facing things to the kind of behind the scenes, inner workings and the plumbing, if you will.
And with the focus on thought leadership that you talked about, where are you sort of, I guess, like focusing the effort in terms of the thought leadership that Gong is putting out as a well-known brand, established brand, and the research and the papers from Gong, but then also the personal brand type thought leadership of the leaders within the organization?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Amy, because I view them as one and the same. It's funny when I say thought leadership, it's kind of like influencer these days. I'm not really sure exactly what it means, but you know it when you see it. And so, I guess to put it simply, thought leadership, in my opinion, is very similar to what content should do, which is change the way people think and act. And so if you can nail one of those two things, even just think, right? Some things are high level pieces. You just want to change the way people are, perceiving a problem or the current situation. I view the content from the Gong brand related to the thought leadership of the Gong employee base. Because one is we kind of fuel both on the marketing team. We really try to build these platforms. We have LinkedIn trainings for people who want to learn how to build a personal brand. We supply content that they can, choose to share or not. And we have some really cool campaigns coming up that will kind of display that. And so it's really kind of a twofold. So it's like, what is the main narrative that we want our audience to know from Gong? And can we use our, leverage our employee base to distribute that content, which is something we've been really, grateful to have. It's one of our strengths is we get, dozens of Gongsters, that's what we call our employees, to share our content because they really enjoy it and they really believe in it. We have that buy-in from our sales team. And so we're doing kind of a little bit of both, right? It's like helping our employees build their brand, but also using them as a quote unquote, like distribution channel, again, completely optional for them.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that you do that. And also, as you said, that you provide some support and coaching training as to how to go about doing that as well. Because see some organizations that just assume that people will share and provide no real guidance as to how and that level of support. So that's great. It says on your LinkedIn that you are leading the team that creates the most engaging sales content on the internet. And I would love to know, in terms of that phrase engaging, how are you guys measuring that it is truly engaging content? What are the kind of KPIs and metrics or qualitative, quantitative type, aspects that you are looking at?
Amy, when you read it back to me, it sounds like a less of a humble brag than maybe I was shooting for when I wrote it. But no, in all seriousness, I do agree. And there's of course it's subjective. If you find it engaging, but I didn't use the word best because I think anyone can say we're number one or we're the best. And we don't try to be the best. We try to be the most engaging. We want to win the minds and hearts of our audience. And I think we've done a pretty good job so far. And so there's a lot of different ways we do that. You can look at it simply as any of the organic channel growth, right? Are we getting more LinkedIn followers? Are we getting more email subscribers? Are we getting more people on the blog and the website traffic and all those things? And that's been going up and to the right, thankfully for the last few years. The other thing we look at very specifically is engagement rate on LinkedIn. We have about 4.5% engagement rate across all of our LinkedIn content for the Gong page. We don't track across all the employees. So that's something we take really seriously, right? As we have scaled our programs over the last couple years, especially the content output on email channels and LinkedIn, we don't want to just go, double content production for the sake of doubling content and then see our engagement rate drop, right? So we focus on that every 2 weeks. We have a meeting, we go over the top engaging posts, least engaging posts, what can we learn, what can we change? And then we look at that engagement number to make sure that it's staying where it should be. Of course, it fluctuates a little bit from week to week. And that's a little bit of a better indicator than just followers. Followers is a little bit more of a lagging indicator.
Yeah. It's the reason I asked that question. It is because that term engaging stood out to me. Like you said, not, the best or the most followed, whatever, but engaging, which is the term that I think would be the most important when you're talking about the content that you're creating online as well. So yeah. I really like that. So we've talked about, what your team's doing in the focus and that kind of thing. From heading up the content over at Gong, what have you decided to keep in-house and what aspects do you decide that would be best outsourced from a content management perspective?
As we got started, I wanted control. And I don't mean control in the micromanaging way. I mean in that engaging content way, in that quality assurance way, where I said, hey, before we can scale and do more, we need to be great. We need to know what our voice is. We need to know what our content engine is. Because to me, an agency outsourcing, they are only as good as your vision. Right. And that's where I think that mistake comes in, where it's like, hey, if you have a vision and you know what you need and you just need to throw gas on the fire, to use that analogy, or that may be a cliche, then yeah, you might find a consultant or agency who can help you do more, do a little bit better. But where I see people sometimes make the mistake is don't really have a vision. You don't really have a content strategy. You outsource to an agency and the partnership is weak because it's kind of one way. You're like, here's a bunch of money. You give me all the things that I need and how I need to do it. And I've just never seen that work. And so I've didn't do any outsourcing for a while. We have 2 content writers who are not full-time employees. They're freelancers. But I've tried to hire them multiple times. I only bring on freelancers that I would hire full-time. And so one of them's been with us for 5 or 6 years. The other one's been with us for 3 years. And literally once a year, usually around Christmas, I give them a Christmas gift and I say, hey, by the way, if you want to start the new year with a new job, you just call me and I'll hire you on the spot. And so that's how seriously I take kind of like who gets their hands on our content. So that said, we've had those 2 folks. We are starting to scale that out because, as when I joined the marketing team, we were 6 people. Now we are 50. So of course we need more hands on deck. You can't always hire all the full-time employees that you need fast enough. And so we are starting to look at some ways to scale that out. And then we do use a company to help us with our podcast. So we did outsource that as of last year, just to free up some time for the content manager who was running that. Yeah,
I think that's often, quite a common outsource specialization because, podcasting isn't typically an in-house skill, especially in the early days, is it? So it's good to outsource that. Quite often, in answer to that question, SEOs very often another outsourcing that people tend to hand over.
Yeah, we just onboarded an agency for SEO as well. As you can get, for the first 3 years, very much
Yeah.
in-house. And then in the last 6 months, we've had to scale. Like you need some help. So SEO is another one, Amy. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. It's funny you said about the writers, because I think the bane of my life for the last year has been hiring good writers, in terms of all the good writers just want to stay freelance, don't they? And we don't, everyone is an employee at Content 10x. There isn't like that freelance aspect really. And I'm finding that a struggle because everyone wants to stay freelance. It's a challenge. Let's talk about one of your best content marketing initiatives. So what do you consider to be the best or the most kind of memorable content marketing initiative that you have been responsible for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I have two, but you can decide if you have to make me stick to one. I'll stick to probably the most popular one, which is our Gong Labs research blog. So while I do manage it today, I did not create it. Chris Orlob, who was in my chair before me, created it with our CEO. He was employee like 4 or 5, so he was very, very early on. And essentially, what it is a research blog where we use our proprietary database of all those sales interactions, and we comb through these millions and millions of sales interactions and start to highlight different insights, so we can zoom in on a really specific sales scenario. For example, here's a fun one, Amy. I wrote this 3 years ago. I still get people, pinging me about it, which was, how does cursing impact your sales results? So is it a good thing or a bad thing? Now, it's kind of a funny story. I was sitting at my desk back in the office a couple of years ago, and I could not come up with the next, idea. I'm sitting, tapping, twiddling my thumbs. I'm looking around like, what should I dive into for this, hypothesis? And you can bleep it out, but I was like, shit, I don't know. Wait a second. That's what it is right there. That curse sparked it. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I curse on sales calls. Sometimes people curse, like as a prospect, people will curse, not necessarily at me, thank God, but in general. And so that's something we looked into. And so that was a really interesting one to publish. And so the reason I start there is because that blog post has been going strong for many years. But the real reason I think it was successful, other than the data piece and the level of insight, which is very high, is that it really turned it really turned the sales content world upside down. And by that, I mean a lot of the content, or all of it, was, hey, I've been in sales for 20 years and this is what works best. Or I've been in sales for 15 years and here's how I go about X, Y, Z. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it is opinion-based and it's very limited amount of, experience. It could be an insurance saleswoman in the northeast corner of, the United States. Great for you, but might not apply, right, across the board to other people. And so by bringing this data first approach, we grabbed a lot of attention. We're very prescriptive in it. So, we have insight and tactical advice, and it's just been really successful for, building our brand, building our audience, and creating pipeline as well.
That's fantastic. That's a really, really good example. Really, really interesting. Just a super quick break from this conversation to let you know that if you're a B2B technology or professional services company and you want help with streamlining your content operations, outsourcing your content repurposing is the #1 way to produce more high quality content and boost your ROI without putting any more pressure on your team. In fact, it could save your team up to 30 hours per week. We offer content repurposing services for video and audio content. Whether you have a show or you're launching a brand new one, maybe you have an archive of awesome content, be it webinars or a virtual event, or you want help creating thought leadership content that we can repurpose, we've got you covered. Head to content10x.com to see how we can help you and start increasing your efficiency and the value you get from your content. Now back to the conversation. What about in terms of the flip side? So do you have any cautionary tales or funny stories about, something that didn't go quite to plan?
Ooh, fair point. Well, a quick funny anecdote. It went maybe too well. We usually do a April Fool's joke or campaign at Gong, because if you know anything about our brand, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Last year we did a what was it called? The Happy Ears headset. Now, for those who don't know in sales, if you're not familiar, we sell to salespeople, if you haven't noticed by now. And so the happy years is this thing like, Amy, imagine I'm selling to you, right? And you're the decision maker and it's the first call and you're like, yeah, this sounds pretty interesting. I could see this working out. Happy years on a sales rep would be like, I've got a deal. Amy's going to buy. I'm going to tell my boss about it, put it in commit. It's that concept of, hearing a little bit more than reality. And so I made these, I got these Bose headsets. I spray painted them purple. And we made this like cheesy commercial video of these happier headsets that like handle objections for you. So when Amy tells you something, you can hear this like funny voice in your head, like, make sure that I get an upfront contract, make sure that you objection, all these, so it gives you advice. Hilarious, silly video. We put it out there. And if you click the link to buy the headset, which is what we promoted, you would get to a landing page that looked like a real page that you could buy something. And only when you add to cart did the pop-up come up with like, April Fools, this doesn't exist, but here's some content to help you with happy years. It went really well. Not enough people clicked the link that it was, add to cart. So a lot of people thought it was real. Like we entered the hardware game to the point where even an SDR on our team slacked me and said, Devin, I love those headsets. When does the SDR team get ours? And I felt really bad telling him, those are not real, my friend, and you will not be getting a set, but I'm glad you watched the video.
I absolutely love that. I love a joke like that where you put that amount of effort into it too. That is completely my style as well. Like, we need a landing page, we need a cart, we need everything. I love that. That's fantastic. So yeah, maybe some people will left still to this day saying, do you remember that time when Gong had did that campaign? Yeah. But hey, yeah, it sounds like it was a good one. So it's fantastic. So some quick fire questions for you. So what is one takeaway tip that you would give to other content marketers looking to optimize their content output?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say, I think when I talk to other marketers, whether that's, and especially content, but marketers in general, and could be a leader of content or, an IC, the number one thing that I sense or hear directly is that they're overwhelmed. I haven't heard anyone say that they've got more. I've got Friday afternoon open. I'll take on a new project, right? It's like everyone's strapped for time, myself included. And so my advice is, stop doing so much. And here's really what I mean, because there's so many things you can do in marketing. We oftentimes as marketing think that we should be doing all of those things, right? I could have a blog. I could have a podcast. I just heard Devin talk about a research blog. Maybe I should launch one of those. Maybe I should do Twitter. Devin's on LinkedIn, and there's just so much input that I think sometimes it's external, indirect, right? Like you could hear this podcast and think maybe I need to do something new, which hopefully is that if the case, if it makes sense for you. Or it could be your CEO or CMO, saying we need to have this, we need to have it tomorrow. And so I think what happens is, you've heard the expression, you get spread really thin. And instead of being great at one thing, you're okay or mediocre at 5 to 10 things. And that has a lot of really bad repercussions, right? The results usually aren't there. A big one is sales. You can lose the sales buy-in. You're like, we got a podcast, so it's not that good. Like I wouldn't recommend it. Like that's really bad if your employee base isn't really excited about your content. And so my advice is, and I followed this when I got into content, was I picked 1 or 2 things and I went really, really deep and I put all of my energy into it. And I was really confident that if these worked, it would open up new doors to new channels and new things, right? So ours was this research blog and LinkedIn. That was it. And they were tied because I would distribute the content through LinkedIn. We just did that over and over and over for a good year. Then, we started adding video to LinkedIn, right? So it's like, okay, bulking up LinkedIn a little bit more. We're still not on Twitter. I mean, we are very lightly, but barely, basically not on Twitter. We're not really on Facebook organically. We're not really on YouTube except for putting our podcast there. Like we don't have a YouTube show. And we'll get there eventually, right? Like you can still be strategic and effective in a couple channels and build an entire content engine around that's really successful and fun to build, than thinking that you have to have a weekly webinar series or something like that.
Yeah, there's a million things you can do, but you can't do them all. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What would you say is a typically often overlooked or undervalued tool that you would recommend to content marketers like yourself?
We run a really lean tech stack. I took great pride in not buying anything for a long time. And then now we do buy things once or twice a year, but only when needed. I would say Path Factory has been a really interesting pickup for us. Are you familiar with Path Factory, Amy?
No, I'm not actually. No.
So it's I forgive if anyone at Path Factory or someone who bought it is listening. I might mess up their elevator pitch, but it's a content experience platform, or at least that's how I view it. And so what it does is, in the old way, which we're migrating from, is the amount of insight we had on who consumed our content was mostly if we knew who you are on the website, or if you gave me your email address, and then we did a bunch of data enrichment and we could figure you out from there. But when you downloaded a 2-pager or a 20-page ebook, I have no idea if Amy downloaded it and saved it to her desktop. Did she spend 2 minutes, 20 minutes? Did she go read other content, which wasn't really, it's not really available. You just don't know these things. I wanted to solve that. And I wanted to solve the content experience, which I don't think is that great to have that constant change of email address. And then you're on a landing page and you can read a PDF, but you can't do the YouTube effect of like getting in the content rabbit hole of like providing more content, right? If you just downloaded something about, deal navigation, you might want closing tips next, right? You might want some stuff around how to sell to a CFO. So I wanted to deliver that experience and get more insight. And so Jordan on my team, fantastic content marketer, had used it in the past. She suggested that we use it again. So we bought it about 6 months ago. And some of the really cool things we're seeing is, one is, how much time are people spending on our content? I'm very happy that it's much more than I anticipated. I'm always like, if they've probably spent 30 seconds on this thing that we spent weeks on, but we're seeing minutes, and we're seeing it increase. And another really cool thing is there's a binge rate. So on the, whatever you went to download, on the left-hand side, there's 7 things that you can build as the content creator. Like, okay, here's the 7 next things I would want you to look at, or you'll probably want to look at. And you can track the binge rate. So like 30% of people click 2 more pieces of content. So if you think about that, in one campaign, we're seeing hundreds more pieces of content being consumed just by having a better content experience.
Wow. I'm going to check that out. That sounds awesome. So yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. I will add the link in the show notes and checking it out ourselves. Yeah. Now, if you could create any kind of content at all, so the sky is the limit. There's TV shows or billboards in Times Square, or you name it. What's that thing that you're gonna do?
I thought about this long and hard yesterday, and like I hate when I run a podcast. I'm not a huge fan of when people take my question and answer it kind of differently. So I'm sorry that I'm going to do that. But no, you said if I had no bounds, what would you create? I looked at no bounds, and I wouldn't just build one piece of content. I would actually build a true internal media company. And I know that's kind of a phrase that's been thrown around, like don't build a marketing team, build a media company. And I'm okay with the advice at a high level. Executing it is very challenging. It's nearly impossible. So if I really had no bounds and unlimited money, I would actually build a sub team that is just a media company purely focused on winning attention. I wouldn't be trying to sell too much. I mean, you would be able to passively sell as other podcasts and B2C content plays do, but I would really try to do something like build the next morning brew, build the next hustle. And I would want it to be multi-channel. So I would build a YouTube show. If I had to pick one thing, by the way, if you're like, Devin, pick one thing. It would be like a very edutaining YouTube show, heavy on entertainment, medium light on information. But like back to the media play, like that would be one thing for one core audience. A different audience, I'd have a newsletter, another one, a podcast, maybe 2, books, ebooks, that sort of thing. And really just kind of break out of the like webinar, email, social media kind of mold that B2B is, I say lovingly stuck in, because, we have numbers to hit and we have attribution we need to show. But if I could just break through that's really what I would break through, is like, goals and numbers in that sense. And really just like, how can we truly deliver again, the most engaging content on the internet? That's what I would do.
Love it. That's fantastic. Thank you. Great answer. So on B2B Content Strategist, we speak to true leaders like yourself in the B2B tech world. Who do you think we should be inviting next onto the show?
Ooh, I'm just going to go who came to mind first. So Raj aka Raj Nation, aka Raj the Hype Man. He's a good friend of mine. He does really interesting content on LinkedIn. He mostly does like raps, like music. But it's really good. It's really good. So I would say he's really interesting because he understands storytelling. He does it through music for himself, but he has a consultant, a firm that helps with that as well. I'm a big fan of Chris Walker at Refine Labs. I like the way that he has such a unique point of view. I'm probably not the first to say his. Who else do I like? I always have all these lists of people who I know all the time. Then you put me on, you get put on the spot. Like, what's your favorite movie? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know any movies. I like Camille Trent. We talked about Camille before the show. She's fun. Dave Gerhardt. You can never go wrong with Dave. He's always got something cool to say. I know he's a popular one. I'm trying to go in the deep cuts, but yeah, those are some good folks. If I remember people offline, I'll send them over to you, because there's definitely a lot of great content creators out there.
Yeah.
Oh, I just remembered. Sorry. Eddie Schlainer. I knew I was forgetting my buddy, Eddie Schlainer at verygoodcopy.com. He's fantastic.
Verygoodcopy.com. Cool. Sounds good. Sounds like someone we need to know. So that's good.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's been a great conversation, just like I thought it would be. So thank you so much for coming onto the show. Where would you like people to go to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Big surprise. I only said it 14 times in today's show. So you can catch me on LinkedIn. I also have a newsletter if you're interested. It's called the Content Strategy Newsletter. Every week on Saturday mornings, I deliver basically one lesson under 5 minutes about content creation and content strategy. So if you want to join there, you can. It's newsletter.thereader.co. I'm sure you'll put down the show notes, Amy, to make it simple for people. But yeah, those are the best ways to get a hold of me. If you like anything I said, there's more where that came from. So
yeah, thank you so much. I will make sure that we put the links to everything in the show notes. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. It's been an awesome conversation.
Lovely. Thanks, Amy. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of B2B Content Strategist. Do let me know what you thought of our conversation by getting in touch with me on social media. You'll find Content 10X on all the social platforms, or search for Amy Woods, CEO of Content 10X on LinkedIn. To find out more about streamlining your content marketing processes, and specifically about content repurposing, check out our website content10x.com. where you'll find information and resources that will help you achieve more with your content more efficiently. And if you're looking for a partner to outsource your content repurposing and distribution to, get in touch, as we offer a world-class, fully end-to-end, done-for-you content repurposing service. Thanks again for listening to this episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.